You believe the dragons alter us in some way?
You now have many dragons. Are you yourself not altered?
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. I had a chance to see the first few episodes of House of the Dragon Season 3. This will be my non-spoilery review of the season so far. I will be doing weekly episode videos for the series when it starts next week, just like normal, so congratulations. The long night is over, the wait is over, we finally have new episodes again. Everybody grab your Valyrian weapons and hop on a dragon because there are so many dragons this season. Everybody gets a dragon this season. You get a dragon this season. Season 3 starts off with such a huge bang that you really feel like it's HBO and Ryan Condal trying to apologize for what happened to Season 2. During Season 2, we found out pretty late in the season that they'd be cutting 2 episodes and there'd only be 8, and the traditional big battle that they were normally would end the season with got pushed to Season 3. So Season 2 ended in this really bizarre fashion where it seems like a lot of storylines didn't pay off and just headed nowhere because they wrote Season 2 as 10 episodes, so everything through that episode 8 was leading towards a normal conclusion in 9 and 10, and now finally at the beginning of Season 3, we get that huge battle that they wanted to give us in Season 2, leading off Season 3. I did a way deeper video on what happened with Season 2, that big debacle after the season finished. If you want to hear all the tea on that, don't blame HBO for that one, blame David Zaslav. Now, at least based on the episodes I have seen and what they've said so far behind the scenes, it feels like they planned for it to be 8 episodes. They wrote it to be beginning, middle, and conclusion 8 episodes from the start. So Season 3 is kind of like their apology tour for Season 2. Sorry, we can do cool stuff. We have lots of dragons. Watch them commit war crimes. All the normal Game of Thrones and now House of the Dragon standard tropes you've come to expect are there. Targaryens are their own worst enemies. They are most likely to succumb to their either own madness, getting higher on their own supply, fall prey to their own very, very questionable and sometimes downright terrible decisions, and their own petty desire for revenge against each other when pretty much everybody in the story, the main characters have dragons, a nuclear weapon, and they keep all spamming the fire button. A whole bunch of trigger-happy Targaryens. And it is spectacular watching them all slowly spiral out. That's part of the fun of the show. The book that they're adapting from, Fire and Blood, has been out for a very long time, so you know how it's going to end, or if you haven't read the book, you can go out and read how it's going to end right now, but the real fun is in watching the characters.
My rule was ordained. It was prophesied.
What's different about Season 3 from previous seasons, though, is the spectacle gets cranked up all the way to 11, like even higher than the bigger battles in previous seasons, because we are now finally in the actual Dance of the Dragons Targaryen Civil War that was the primary reason for them adapting this show in the first place. They have finally reached the meat and potatoes part of the story. Dinner is served, and almost all the dragons have been activated. Not every single dragon that's alive during this part of the timeline, but most of them. So we are finally getting payoff on the original promise of the show. This is also where a lot of the biggest changes to the book story come to, this part of the Dance of the Dragons in the show, mostly in what everyone is doing while the battles are going on in the background, like while this is all unfolding. Probably the biggest of all being Rhaenyra and Alicent's storyline. Whether or not you agree with him, Ryan Condal has said many times over the seasons that he built the whole show from the start with Rhaenyra and Alicent being like his 2 main characters. Even though technically it's an ensemble with like a whole bunch of different characters, he views the 2 of them as the mains, and it really feels more like Rhaenyra's story if you're actually thinking about it, and Alicent is just an important part of that. If you liked all the Rhaenyra and Alicent stuff in Season 1 and Season 2 with the 2 of them together, like their scenes together, you will get way more of that in Season 3, at least the episodes I've seen so far. I don't think it's a spoiler to say, because now they're both inside the Red Keep near each other after a certain point early in the season. But if you did not like all their shenanigans, all their scenes together, even in previous seasons before they started hating each other, and you don't care about Rhaenyra or you don't care about Alicent, then you're probably going to have a rough time this season. Daemon is still as crazy as ever, like he's having more fun than almost all the other characters on the show, but he's way more of a loyal husband now, full team Rhaenyra supremacy. He's not gunning to put himself on the Iron Throne anymore, so that's not really a big subplot anymore. Now he's devoted most of that dark energy to gassing up Rhaenyra to commit even more war crimes. I loved all the Winter Wolf stuff so far. They're going to be awesome this season. Always love having House Stark be a bigger part of the story when it makes sense. They're not a huge part of the story that they're adapting right now beyond the Winter Wolves subplot. Really love seeing Aemon continue to go even crazier than he was in Season 2, but the cracks do start to show in his metaphorical armor, so to speak. A boy playing war against far more experienced people who also have dragons or crazy magic or are playing four-dimensional chess against him without him really realizing it. Really looking forward to seeing things get super weird and trippy for him at Harrenhal with Alice Rivers too.
It's a touch late to be stalking about a strange castle putting its people to the sword.
I think Ryan Condal and the writers learned a lot about what people hated about Daemon's Season 2 subplot in Harrenhal and tried to avoid a complete repeat of that with Aemond. Just addressing some of the weaknesses in these first couple of episodes, as with previous seasons, all the big changes to the books and things that they added to expand the story didn't totally work out in some cases, didn't totally work for me. It kind of felt like the show wasn't really sure what to do with Otto Hightower later in Season 2 after he became another Daemon Harrenhal kind of subplot problem, where the show just had to stick him in timeout for a while, like, we can't deal with you right now, we'll get to you later at some point, and then later just takes a while, like a very long time. And unlike Daemon, because Otto is a lesser character in the story now, it kind of feels like they just slapped on a conclusion for his storyline to service Rhaenyra's storyline and try to be as book accurate as possible. So because of how little we saw of Otto in Season 2, in the long lag between Season 2 and Season 3, the show kind of has to remind you that he's still part of the show before hastily wrapping up his storyline. Like, hey, remember, he's still a character on the show, he's still alive, we have to do something with him these first couple of episodes. And there are a lot of other side characters, lesser characters in the story who are like this. Remember all these characters? They're still a thing too. When you look back at the original Game of Thrones series, it felt like it did a much better job at juggling a story with even more characters and even wider scope. And I think the reason why House of the Dragon feels so much smaller in scope despite them spending so much more on the budget is just because Ryan Condal is so laser focused on Rhaenyra's storyline and the internal politics of just this small slice of Westeros. The overall story of House of the Dragon barely involves the North or Dorne in the South, so when you really think about it, outside of like a little bit of Triarchy showing up again, the entire show is basically just self-contained to the middle part of Westeros. When you actually look at the book story that they're adapting for this, it involves way more characters, covers way more Westeros in the East, despite being much shorter in actual written material, like there is barely any material that George R. R. Martin wrote for this period in The Dance of the Dragons. But somehow it still feels like they don't have enough time to actually service all the characters in a proper way like you would expect during the original Game of Thrones series, especially in the earlier seasons of that show. Part of the problem, I think, for House of the Dragon is that if they had a full 10 episodes per season for every season, then they might have room to actually fix this issue.
There is treachery somewhere, and I seek to uncover it.
What you seek is revenge.
More room in the overall story to accommodate bigger storylines for all the side characters, like proper storylines for all these other side characters. No surprise, this is also one of George R. R. Martin's chief complaints a couple years ago after Season 2, that their changes shrinking down the story actually hurt the overall show. So HBO, whenever we get to whatever the next show is going to wind up being, please give them 10 episodes again. Helena doesn't have quite as much to do in this first part of the episodes that I've seen so far, which is kind of a bummer. They've also radically changed her storyline from the books, just in general, across the entire show with her dragon dreams, her visions, in just how they work in general. But if we're talking about book changes, hers are some of the more fun ones, I think, and even George R. R. Martin, who famously complained about the show a lot, praised TV show Helena as being superior to his book Helena. Criston Cole is as big a dirtbag as you've come to expect from him. Cannot wait to see him eventually get his comeuppance in later episodes. I've only seen the first few episodes, so there are still a lot of questions I know people have about the other characters in general that we'll just have to wait till we get the later episodes. But most of the new ones to this season, like Ormond Hightower, for instance, are fairly interesting. We will see what they do in later episodes. But if you've read the books, like I said, the books have been out there for a long time. You have a pretty good idea for broad strokes of the way the season is going to play out. Looking at the trailer footage they have released so far, though, it contains scenes from some later episodes. It does seem like they made changes to some of the bigger battles and who survives what and where certain people are during the season, so just expect a lot of that too. As usual, the music was fantastic. Game of Thrones had some of the best music. Ramin Djawadi's score is amazing. They reused that largely for House of the Dragon and just added new themes, like Rhaenyra has her own theme, Daemon has his own theme. Most of the characters, like the major characters, have some of their own themes. Just in general, Season 3 so far feels like what most people were expecting when we heard there was going to be a Dance of the Dragons show. Like now we are here in the actual Dance of the Dragons. There are actual fighting. So at least so far, it is a huge upgrade from Season 2. We'll have to wait till Season 4 to see how they wrap it all up and which season wound up being the best. But I do think the good news is that, at least from my own opinion, that Season 3 so far, the first couple of episodes that I've seen, are a marked improvement from a lot of the complaints that people had about Season 2. So you can be at least thankful for that. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below. I know there's going to be a ton of questions about the season. I'll try to answer most of them during my full episode breakdown and Easter egg videos. We also have Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Season 2 coming next year in 2027. I've already done a bigger video for that, so I'll link it below in the description. HBO has said that they do plan to continue releasing Knight of the Seven Kingdoms on a yearly basis, so it will continue to fill the gaps between House of the Dragon and whatever the next successor show winds up being. We probably won't hear what that's going to be till House of the Dragon Season 4.
Well, funny you should ask. Let me get my map.
HBO also just announced that the Aegon's Conquest story will be a movie now, possibly multiple movies if the first one goes well. And as far as the Paramount buyout stuff is behind the scenes, David Ellison, the head of Paramount, is like a Game of Thrones fanboy. It sounds like he wants them to keep making shows and now movies to the heat death of the universe, so I'm not really worried about the long-term health of the Game of Thrones universe. My Full House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 1 video will post next Sunday night after they release it, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss those. And click here for that video. I'll update the link as soon as I post it. And click here for all my other House of the Dragon and Knight of the Seven Kingdoms videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.